Hello, good evening, and thank you once again for taking the time out and joining us here at HT Auto Ask the Expert, the episode where we try to get the answers to all the questions that you shared with us through the week and also try to take a little bit of an assessment about the direction in which the Indian automotive industry is heading. As usual, I would like to welcome Murad Ali Baig, who's once again been kind enough to take the time out and give us answers to all the questions that we received. Murad, welcome and thank you so much.
Well, welcome. Happy to be here with you.
Brilliant. Murad, before we go into the reader questions, a little bit of an assessment of what's been happening in the last week or so. A lot of movement in the auto industry, new launches, new product launches happening, some in the mass market segment, some in the luxury segment. And the sales reports were out yesterday. And sorry, do we?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, just a second, Murad. Sorry, I was getting a call, although I've put my phone on airplane mode. I don't know how I got a call. एक बार नितिन check कर लोगे? We can just do this again.
ठीक चल रहा था. You can repeat. अगर वापस डाल दो airplane mode पे कोई दिक्कत नहीं है.
नहीं airplane mode पे ही I don't know call कैसे आ गया.
नहीं call नहीं हमें कोई disturbance नहीं आई. हमें कोई disturbance नहीं है. You can cut the call अगर कुछ ऐसा आता है तो. ठीक है.
Call cut कर दिया मैंने.
हाँ हाँ.
अगर call आता है by any chance, I'll just disconnect and continue, right?
No problem. Just introduce. हाँ वहीं से ले लो या start से लेना है.
Start से ही ले लो.
Start से लेते हैं better है. Great. नितिन starting से लेते हैं.
Murad, sorry, this was weird. Hello, good evening, and welcome once again to HT Auto Ask the Expert. This is the show where we get you answers to all the questions that you share with us through the course of the week. And to get you those answers, we are once again joined by Murad Ali Baig, industry veteran and an auto expert. Murad, thank you for taking the time out and joining us once again.
My pleasure. Happy to be with all of you again.
Right, before we get into the questions that have been sent to us, let's pause for a bit and assess what all has been happening in the Indian auto industry. Lots of launches, both in the mass market segment as well as in the luxury segment. The sales reports were out yesterday, and almost every auto manufacturer seemed to have a big smile and grin, although there is a little bit of caution as well because of that looming third wave. Murad, if I can just ask you, before we get this show started, how do you look into all that's been happening in the auto industry in the last two weeks?
Well, after several months of being locked down, about 2 weeks ago, things started looking up a bit. The COVID situation seems to be very much improved all over India, and therefore everybody having got cabin fever, being locked into their bloody cabins for so long, were dying to get out and dying to move and dying to get back onto the saddle, back behind the steering wheel, going off to the mountains. The roads to Simla, to Missouri, to all the bloody hill stations were full of people just dying to get out. And a lot of people also made a beeline for the showrooms because they said, after a long time, I'm in the mood to do something. I'm in the mood to buy a new car, a new bike, and I want to get moving.
There are a lot of OEMs point to pent-up demand. This is something that we even saw last year during the first wave, and is being mentioned even now and during the second wave. Now, if pent-up demand is really the force behind the surge in sales, do you think that is something that can be sustained for the next upcoming couple of months, or is it just something that's more of a run and miss?
Traditionally, the sales were always low at the end of the financial year. So roughly in February, March, the sales were low because everybody wanted to have a car which is more in the latest financial year where they had the new budgets and so on. And therefore, but because of COVID, a lot of people had to postpone their demands. So therefore, suddenly there's a large sense of, I've got money saved up, I'm fed up of my old model, and I want to buy something new. I better go and do something about it now.
Right. Just that gets us to the first user question. Ajay Singhania has shared with us that he's planning to buy a new car, but he's confused between a hatchback and a sedan, and he has a family of 4 with 2 kids and the occasional highway ride. Now, a lot of people do ask us about what should they prefer, a sedan or a hatchback in current times of SUVs. Let's just keep the SUVs aside, but what are the pros and cons of both a hatchback and a sedan?
Well, the main point is that by and large, a sedan which has a large boot, the large boot is very seldom used. And there's quite a lot of space in a car. And when you're going for a journey, you somehow manage to fit everything into a car, whether it's a hatchback or a sedan. But the point is that a hatchback is significantly cheaper, and number two, it's got everything that sedan has. I mean, between the wheels, there up till the rear wheel, there's hardly any difference between a sedan and a hatchback. But a hatchback only has a slightly smaller boot, so the dicky space is less, but it's not that bad. In fact, some of them are quite spacious, surprisingly. And as a result of this, a lot of people don't. And a hatchback also looks a bit younger. So therefore, a lot of people want a hatchback because it's a little easier to park. It's a little younger. You begin to feel that you're not such a stuffy old man driving along in a sedate old sedan.
Right. Sedate or sedans can be sedate, but Ajay, you've also mentioned that you would prefer a car under rupees 10 lakhs. So there are a lot of options in hatchback. Now, if luggage is not that big a consideration in a small family, then some of the hatchbacks are actually a good option. Which gets us to our next question. Murad, a lot of interest has been generated by a certain Czech manufacturer in the country with the Kushaq. Skoda is making big promises, and we've been getting a lot of questions about the Skoda Kushaq. Most of the questions, though, relate to the service network of Skoda. Now, Skoda has been really doing a good job. They've been claiming about ramping up their service network. The question that I get from Viren is that how important is it for him to consider a car manufacturer based on their service network? He's interested in the Kushaq. And also, if I may add here, we've got another question which is sort of similar. There is Adit Shah, who says that he's really impressed with the Skoda Superb. He really wants to buy it, but he's a little concerned about the service network. So combining the two questions, if you can just throw a little bit of light on OEMs with service networks, which may not be as robust as some of the major players.
Well, we have to recognize that things have changed. If you're living in a large city, there's very little difference between the service network you have from Skoda or from Renault as compared to one of the big brands like Maruti and so on. In a big city, the service network is just more or less as good as bad from any brand. If you're in a small town, if you're in Muradabad or Bareilly or Dehradun, then your service problem might be a little bit more difficult. The service problem will not be so difficult. It's mostly the availability of spare parts. But
Murad, let me just interrupt you. I forgot to mention one thing that Viren has said. He stays in Bombay. So just big metropolitan city.
Well, if it's Bombay, then there's precious little difference between one model and the other. All the cars have workshops at inconvenient distance from where any people live, because workshops take space and space is expensive and real estate being thing. So you have to go a fair distance to get your servicing done for almost any brand. And therefore, but now many of the car companies are giving you valet pickup services and so on, and therefore they're very efficient. But I warn you one thing, and that is that the authorized dealers will do the routine servicing efficiently, quickly, efficiently, very good. But if anything out of the ordinary, they are sometimes difficult because they're not always very competent at a tricky service problem. If it's a normal problem to do with your fuel injection, with your electricals and so on, they're pretty good. But if you've got a tricky problem, I know some people who've had a difficult. I mean, my own brother who had a quite a good brand, he had to change his entire fuel pump because they were just not able to solve a recurring problem that is happening in his fuel line.
Right. So, Brain and the specific answer to your question is if you're staying in a large metropolitan city, then you do have service networks everywhere. Certain manufacturers, we're not going to name them, but they are working really hard to expand into tier 2 and tier 3 cities as well. But maybe a little bit of a caution if you do stay in those cities, and choosing a brand which is not as present in India as some of the others are. This gets me to my next question that's been sent to us by Sarvesh Uthavle. He says his car hasn't been operational in about 2 months, and he doesn't even plan on using it anytime soon. He wants to know, should he get someone to remove the battery, and what other maintenance hacks can you suggest for it?
Well, 2 months is about the limit. I have exactly the same problem. I have a small car which I keep in Goa, but I make sure that the security people at the resort where I have my apartment, they start the car and drive it every week. And this is something that our friend should have done. You must always start your car, run it for about, even if you run it for less than 5 minutes, that's enough to get the battery topped up again, and most of the moving parts rolling along as they should be done. But if it's not been used for 2 months, I would say very gingerly, very carefully, get in and start and hope the battery's got enough charge to take it. If it does, then drive it around and then make sure that if somebody starts your car and runs it for 5 minutes once every week or two. If your car doesn't start, then you most of the local workshops near any place will bring a car to you and jumpstart your battery by putting electric wires from connecting their battery to your battery, and you'll get enough charge to start your car. And this is the easiest.
What if, so sorry to cut you short, but what if somebody has a car at, say, Delhi? I know a lot of people who have cars parked here in Delhi but have gone back to their hometowns because of work from home situations, and may not be possible to get somebody to start the car and drive it around for 5 minutes. In those sort of specific cases, would you suggest that the battery should just be disconnected or to be on the safer side?
It should be disconnected when you leave your house. You should not be disconnected after 2 months for sure. But if you're going to leave for 2 or 3 months, you'll be very well advised to disconnect your battery and then get it. But first of all, before you disconnect your battery, just check your battery is okay. Check the acid level, check the thing, make sure it's fully charged, and then disconnect the battery.
Right. We'll jump back to a service-related question. Those seem to be very popular. Jeevan Kumar Vij says that he owns a subcompact SUV, and the service manager recently told him that the brake pads are short. He says he's a bit surprised because the car has only done about 16,000 kilometers, and he claims that he drives safe and normal. What is the best way really to verify and check these sort of technical aspects in a car, and to be absolutely sure that the problem that's been cited is indeed a problem?
Well, any new car which is driven normally, now there's no such thing as driving normally, but if it cars normally, a set of brake pads should last at least 25,000 kilometers. And if it does less than that, then he needs to get a second opinion. But for that, you have to remove your wheels, take a look at the brake line, and get a second opinion. You don't. Is it possible for us to do it, non-technical people? If you know what to look for. But the point is, it's very easy to get a. There's still a few roadside mechanics available, a few taxi drivers and others who can just look at the thing and say that and be able to give you an opinion that the brake linings or the brake pads have been worn out or not. But if there's no way I can verbally describe what shows that a thing. If somebody sent me a video of the worn parts, I might be able to give an opinion.
Yeah. Jeevan, so one of the ways you can do this is by asking your service manager to send you a video or a photo, and then go to a local mechanic, show him the video, and just get a second opinion in case your suspicions are very, very strong that the brake pads are fine. Murad, is that a good idea?
It can be done.
All right. All right. Next question comes from Neeraj Singh. He says, what are the things that you should watch out for when taking a car on rent for highway trips? Are there any finer prints that should be specifically noticed?
Definitely. Well, first of all, if I were to take rent a car and go out for more than a couple of days, a short distance or long distance, I would take my mobile camera and go and take a video of all the four sides of the car, because later on, when I return the car, the rentier might tell me that, oh, there's a scratch here, there's a bump there, this has been an accident there. Now, if I have a record on my mobile of what it was like when I took it, he can't give me any cock and bull story. So that's the first thing that you must check. That there's, I mean, if you've damaged a rented car, you would definitely have to pay for it. But is the damage actually yours, or was something that had happened before? So easy way to check that. Second thing is 80% of the problems you'll have on a car on a long journey, any car, yours or a rented car, will be concerning the tires. So you must be very careful to check that the tires are good. And if there's a little problem with any of the tires, make sure that at least you have the best tires on your front two wheels. Your front wheels are the ones that get the maximum impact, that get the braking force, the acceleration. On most of new cars are front wheel drive, and steering effort, everything comes on the front wheel. So therefore the front tires should be there. And therefore, if you have a problem, you're likely to be mostly concerned about your front wheels. So those are, I would say, the two main things that you should check. Apart from that, just generally check the state of the battery, the state of, I mean, otherwise you'll check most things normally. No big deal.
Right. Neeraj, also something from my personal experience, I've had people telling me that they've lost the security deposits because they didn't see there was a top speed limit on the car. So if you're going above 80 or 100, then you tend to lose your security deposit. So do check the finer prints about if there is an upper limit that's been mentioned in the agreement that you've signed. I think we have time for just about two more questions. The next one is a little technical, Murad, bear with me. Weber Money, he says that he has a couple of old two-wheelers, Kinetic and Kinetic Honda. The road tax renewal is pending, but for that, the department is asking to get HSRP made, that's high security registration plates. The problem, he says, is none of the HSRP sites are accepting HSRP registration for Kinetic or Kinetic Honda. He wants you to suggest how to get an HSRP made in such a situation.
The authorized dealers of any brand are required to, are responsible for and have the full responsibility for giving you the high security number plates. But if it's a motorcycle or vehicle that's more than 3 years old, then you don't have to have high security number plates. But if it's less than 3 years old, the RTOs have to give you a number plate, and if the dealer is no longer existent or whatever, you have to have a rather tedious process of going online to the nearest RTO and going. It's not an easy process. It takes a little bother.
Right. The last question then that we have time for, Vikas says that he's a big fan of Royal Enfield, especially models in the 500cc variant. It's been discontinued now, and he says he would like to go for a second-hand, less used model, especially with compliance in Delhi. He wants to know specifically, is it wise enough to buy a second-hand bike, Royal Enfield bike, for long distances, or are there better options available in the same budget from others?
Well, in most situations, a new vehicle is obviously better than an old one. But it has to also be said that the new technology has changed so much that the new cars and new bikes, they are no longer the old thing that every 3 years you have to change it. The new cars and bikes have, as far as the powertrain is concerned, have a life of 200,000 kilometers or more. So there's nothing much that will happen to them. Of course, things like tires and batteries and so on, those will wear out much sooner, clutch plates and so on. But as far as the main things, as long as it's not had an accident, and you can check quite easily in terms of the fact that whether there's any sign of accident damage. If there's been no sign of accident damage, then a car that's been well restored, it should be perfectly fit for the road.
All right, Murad. Thank you so much. You've taken a lot of these questions and given us quite an insight into all of them. I hope our readers have benefited from the insights that you've shared. Thank you for taking the time out, Murad. And thank you to everyone who's been watching this. As always, continue to share your questions with us. We'll try our best to get them answered. For now, this is all the time that we have. And thank you and bye-bye.